Thank you all so much for joining. My name is Bill, and today I'd like to talk to you about downloading large-scale data sets at the GDC. So just to go over the agenda, first we're going to give a brief introduction to the GDC and what is offered there, followed by a demo for the data transfer tool and API download. After that, we'll go over some steps on how to troubleshoot the data transfer tool, followed by some Q&A. During the presentation, if you have any questions about anything that we're talking about, please enter it in the Q&A panel in WebEx. We know that it might not be visible right away, but if you click this triple dots, if that you see that, that's where the Q&A panel might be. If you type it in chat, we might not see it at the end, but we'll definitely see your questions if it's in the Q&A panel. So starting with an introduction to the GDC, the NCI's Genomic Data Commons provides the cancer research community with a unified repository and cancer knowledge base that enables data sharing across cancer genomic studies in support of precision medicine. A lot of the large-scale downloads are focused on data files over 5 gigabytes, and files can be browsed and filtered from the GDC data repository, which you can reach from the GDC data portal. Below is an example of a query one might do for a large-scale download. This would be RNA-seq alignments from the TCGA LUAD project, which is lung cancer. So today I'm going to talk to you about the two main options for large file download. The first one is the data transfer tool. This is the standalone tool developed by the GDC that uses the command line. The tool itself uses the GDC API to download, and it applies settings automatically. So it's a bit more of an automated program. This can be downloaded from gdc.cancer.gov, and you would browse to Access Data and the GDC Data Transfer Tool page. The second option is downloading directly from the GDC API. The GDC API uses other software to access it. In this presentation, we're going to be using curl, which is another command line program, but other softwares may be used. For example, certain API calls can be done directly from your browser. The GDC API is also more customizable in terms of settings, but it is less automated. And we're going to get into a basic example for why that is. So the starting point for this presentation and the demo, number one, is going to be having one file UUID. This is a unique ID that references a specific file. This specific one will be one slide image from the TCGA CESC project, which is a cervical cancer project. This is a slide image. It's over 5 gigabytes, and we have all the information about the slide image here. The second starting point is having a manifest with many files. This particular query includes all slide images from the TCGA CESC project, just like before, but it includes all slide images rather than just the one. Below is what a manifest looks like, in which it contains information about the file, including the ID, the file name, the MD5 sum, and off the image a little bit are things like the size and state. So important information pointing to specific files. So that being said, we're going to get right into the demo. So I'm going to get off of the presentation, and we're going to open up Terminal, the other presentation, same thing, but just in a different format, and our UUIDs, because nowhere I'm remembering these UUIDs. So down here is the terminal, which we will use to run the commands, and up here we'll introduce the commands. So starting off, we're going to talk a little bit about the token. The files we will be downloading today will be larger and they will be open access. So tokens aren't actually necessary in this case. However, for demonstration purposes, we will be using a token file because a lot of large-scale download that you may be doing will involve controlled data, and controlled data requires a token. The simulated token we'll be using will not be necessary, but it won't interfere with any of our commands, so it won't be an issue. One distinction I would like to make is the difference between a token file and the token string, which of course is simulated. This is not a real token and will not allow access to anything. The token file is just this file, sim_token for simulated_token.txt. So that's the file itself. The token string we can see by running cat sim_token, and as you can see, we have a string of characters there. This is referred to as the token string. So we're first going to start out with a demo of the GDC Data Transfer Tool. So I'm going to clear out the terminal here, and we're going to first start with /GDC client. In this case, the GDC client is in the same directory as I am in right now. This can be put into your bash environment, but for now we're just running it in the same folder. After that, we'll run download. This simply tells it to run the download function rather than the upload function, which is another feature that we won't get into in this presentation. Next, we're going to specify the file UUID. We're going to run the large file UUID, but we're not going to download the entire thing because that would take a long time. We'll copy and paste it here. And then lastly, we will specify the token file using the -t flag and the sim_token.txt file. And notice here we're using the token file, not the token string. So we're going to go ahead and run that. And what you should see is first some messages, followed by an ETA for when the software estimates the file will be done, and some speed and a progress bar. So we're not going to wait 14 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and cancel this. And we're going to clear the screen out. And we're going to run the same command again. We're going to remove the first UUID. And we're going to add the UUID for a smaller file. Note that this starts with 64A1. It would help if I copied the entire UUID. Go ahead and copy that, paste it here, and run the command. And this will download very quickly. So when the file's done, you should see the entire progress bar done and successfully download message. If files don't download, it will also indicate that if they don't download successfully. So now that we showed you how to use the GDC client or data transfer tool, it's kind of a synonym. We will, using one UUID, we will show you how to use it with the manifest that you can download from the GDC data portal. So we're going to go ahead and clear out the terminal, and we're going to look inside the manifest. As you can see, we have a column that's the ID, the file name, and the expected MD5 sum. The only real required field to run the data transfer tool is the ID. It can figure out everything else from the API, but the other information is for the user so that you can see which UUID is associated with which file. There's other metadata that can be pulled from the portal, but that's for a different webinar. So we're going to get out of that, going back to the command, and we're going to remove the UUID, and instead of a UUID, we will use the -m for manifest command, followed by the name of the manifest file. We're going to run that, and as you can see, it's a very similar output as with the UUID. And it will go a little slower because it's reading a lot of files and figuring out what to do. And we're going to back out of this real quick. And we are going to remove this manifest and instead run a smaller one called small manifest small.txt. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. And even though there are multiple files in this manifest, it will download them all at once, and there are 5 successfully downloaded. And if you look at the actual contents of the manifest, you will see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 files. So now that I've showed you how to use the GDC client with the data transfer tool, we're going to go onto a demo of the GDC API. So the first thing I want to show you is that the token management is a little different here. The token string is stored as a variable for use with curl rather than using the token file itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to run export my token equals $ open parentheses. We'll run cat sim token in the middle, .txt, and that should have done it. So we can verify that the variable was successfully stored by running echo my token. And as you can see, the fig token that is stored inside of simtoken.txt is in this variable. So the API won't work using the file directly. And I do want to say that if you wanted to, you could copy and paste, but we really recommend using this method as it keeps the token string out of your history, which is a little more secure. So we can just run that again and clear that out. And we're going to start with the API command. So we're going to start with curl, which is the software that we're using. At the top here, you can see I run -x git, which is saying run a git request. That's the default for curl, so we don't have to actually type that out. So next, we're going to run -h flag for header. And then to specify the token string, we run x auth token : and then here we put the token string, or specifically the variable, in place of the token string, and the token is specified there. Next, the remote name and the remote header name flags are used to download the file names from the API. So if you had perhaps a pipeline that pulled other information from the API, you could use something like the -o command for output to put it into a specific file name if you're choosing. But we do recommend using this because it will always name the file correctly. Next, the main API URL will be typed out: http api.gdc.cancer.gov/data for data endpoint. This is where all of the files can be downloaded. Next, the UUID will be specified. We're going to use the same one here. Copy and paste that, followed by question mark. And then we're going to use the related files equals true flag at the end of this. And what this does, and it won't actually matter in this command because this is a slide image, but if you're downloading a BAM file, it will download the BAM index file. And if you're downloading a VCF file, it will download the VCF index file. So we recommend using that because those files can be used to help you parse through the file later. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and run that. And the way this runs is basic curl output. It gives you the total time, time left, etc. And we're going to go ahead and cancel this one like we have before. And we're going to run this on a small file, the one we specified before. And this will download very quickly. And as you can see, I'll bring it up a little more, is that it's saved to file name nationwidechildren's.org clinical nte kirk.txt. This is a clinical supplement file. It's also open access. And Yeah, this is successfully downloaded. So we'll clear the screen out. We'll go to the next part, which is downloading multiple files using the API. Now, we don't have time to demonstrate this, but I do want to show you a few options. The first option is to use an API command and loop through a list of UUIDs, which you can do with something like Bash or Python scripts. However you'd like to loop through should work out fine. The second option is to pass a JSON formatted list of UUIDs using a post request to the API. So you would have to use the header content type application slash JSON, which would specify that this is a JSON formatted list of UUIDs. And it also requires a conversion of a plain list of UUIDs to a JSON file, which you could do easy with any scripting language, but it is an extra step. The third option, perhaps if you had a few files, is to use a comma delimited list to specify multiple UUIDs in one line. So this would be the same thing as the command I showed you before, except you would put comma UUID 2, comma UUID 3, etc. But actually putting the UUIDs there. This is limited by the URL length, as curl can only handle a certain length. I don't know what that is offhand, but it won't allow you to download thousands of files at once. So you would need to separate them into chunks or something like that. So lastly, let's talk about the final result, which are the downloaded files. So if we do run ls real quick, you will see that we have a list of files here. And we have a lot of UUIDs in here, and these are folders. When the data transfer tool runs, files will be downloaded in folders named after their UUIDs. So that's what these folders are right here. So if we were to go into the small file folder, CD 64, let's clear that out, and peek inside that folder, you will see that this file is here, nationwide.org, and the annotation file is there along with the logs. Annotations gives you extra information about the files, and this file is good because the data transfer tool automatically verifies the MD5 sum. If you do a partial download that looks like this, we'll check out that larger file, the 216 up here. If you have an incomplete download, you'll see that the file name ends with partial, meaning that the file has not been downloaded completely. This can be started up so that you don't have to download the file again, but if you see partial, that means the file wasn't there, isn't completely downloaded. The API download, the files will be downloaded under the respective file names in your current directory unless you specify otherwise. But in our case, that's what it did. So we have these two files here. One is nationwide, and the other is TCGA slide image, which is the SVS file. And as you can see, these don't have the word partial or anything next to them. So you wouldn't know that these aren't completely downloaded. You would need to verify. And you can do that by running something like MD5 on the file, and it'll give you the MD5 sum. You would then match it up to what the expectation is based on the GDC data portal or the GDC API. And I think if you're using an Ubuntu machine, not a Mac machine, it might be MD5 sum instead. So just to let you know if you're running that. So the demonstration of this webinar were based on Mac OS or any other Unix-based terminal like Ubuntu, Linux, all of that. These functions are all available on Windows, but might run a little differently because the command prompt is different. So if you have any questions about this, documentation and personalized assistance is available, which we'll get to at the end of this presentation. So now, going back to the presentation itself, we're going to talk about a few data download troubleshooting steps that you can do. So the GDC Data Transfer Tool can be used by researchers on a wide variety of operating systems, and it was designed to do so because researchers use many different machines. However, all machines are different, Different institutions have different security settings, connection issues, all things like that. So errors can arise sometimes when using the data transfer tool. Sometimes they will be informative depending on the issue. For example, if you were to run GDC client and you would see no such file or directory, the solution is that the command needs to be pointed at a different directory. It needs to point at where the GDC client software is. If you see something like your token is invalid or expired, this means you need to investigate the token file, which we're going to go over some specific steps in a future slide. So this little flowchart shows kind of how a way that you might troubleshoot an error that you might not be sure about. So let's say you started receiving an error that doesn't specify the exact problem. It just says something like internal server error or something you don't understand. This series of checks will allow you to either solve or at least narrow down the issue so that we can help. Starting out, we recommend checking the data transfer tool version. The current version as of October 2023 is version 1.6.1. The GDC has continually released new versions of this tool to add new features and bug fixes based on user or developer feedback. So all these fixes are there to make it an easier and more smooth experience. So we recommend using the latest version, and that's what's always available at gdc.cancer.gov. A good command that you can run just to verify this is gdc client -- version, and that gives you the version, which should look like this, bottom here. Next, we recommend, if that doesn't work, checking the token. The token is a common source of errors because multiple issues can arise because this is a secure system, and if anything deviates from what's expected, download cannot be allowed. So we need to make sure that everything is valid with your token. So first, the token must be current. If you download a token and then you download another one, that first token no longer is valid. So if you're unsure at all, just go ahead and reset your token and download a new one, and then you will know this is the current token. Also, the token must be correctly parsed. If you have, extra spaces, returns, or the token was accidentally truncated, the token will not work. So just, check the beginning and the end, make sure that it's the same thing, and you can always reset the token if you're not sure. Lastly, the token reflects your dbGaP access to the project. We recommend checking your user profile if you're unsure. So you can do this by logging into the GDC data portal. Then you'll see your ERA Commons ID at the top. That'll be your actual ID, and you'll click on that, followed by the drop-down user profile, and that will give you a list of projects that you have access to. When you see the project you're interested in, you will need access under the member column, and that will allow you to download data. Lastly, if it's still not working, you can try downloading data via the API. Download errors with the data transfer tool could arise from something in the software connecting with your computer software, but it could also stem from connection issues or security settings that may limit your network access. So if you successfully download with the API, that rules out issues that you are connecting to the GDC incorrectly. If this works out for you, this may just be okay, like your files may be downloaded, or it may allow you to talk to your institution about any security settings or things that the IT team could use to make your connection to GDC a little bit more smoother. A quick command to make sure that you can connect to the GDC is by running api.gdc.cancer.gov/status, and this will give you a successful message. If you get something that doesn't seem successful, it means something's wrong with your connection. But lastly, I want to mention that we do run a help desk at the GDC. So here's an email address that you can email to for assistance with data download. Provide any information you gathered from previous steps or other things. and we'll be happy to help you diagnose the problem. We can also help you walk through any of the previous steps outlined here if you're unable to run them or if something arises. If you're using any operating system that isn't Windows, Mac, or Ubuntu, we'd recommend reaching out because we can get the data transfer tool to work out of the box with these three, but the other operating systems might need a little bit of attention. So just to go over a few useful links, this is the GDC documentation site. This gives you users guides for the API data transfer tool and anything else you might use. The GDC website is where the data transfer tool can be downloaded in the Access Data tab here. And then for additional support, if you click in the Support tab, you'll see a link to the monthly support webinars, the help desk, and a link to the user listserv, which will give you information about new data releases, any maintenance windows, or anything else the GDC thinks it's important for its user base to know. Thank you all so much for your attention, and now I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Bill. There was one question on how to get access to controlled data, and I just put in the Q&A a link to where the instructions are on the GDC website.
Cool, sounds good. Yeah, those instructions are very detailed and should tell you how to access TCGAs or any controlled access data. But if you want to look at variants, we do have some open access ones. So I know you probably do need the controlled access data since it's not filtered. But if you'd like to see what we do have in the open access, those can be downloaded in the open access maps. Oh, I see a couple of questions in the chat. It says, I have a question. We are from the University of Glasgow, and we are interested in the protein sequences impacted by the DNA changes for each patient. Is there any way to mass download these functionally impacted protein sequences by linking to Ensemble or some similar database? So yes, the the variants that are called right now on GDC's whole exome and targeted sequencing data, the ones that are filtered as somatic will also have links to external databases and information about their specific consequences, um, as well as um, impact scores. Um, and I can't think of what they are offhand, but there are impact scores there too. So I'd recommend going to the Exploration tab at portal.gdc.cancer.gov, and a lot of the information is there if you click around. And if you contact the GDC help desk, we can offer you ways to download this data in bulk rather than just looking around on the portal.
Hi, Bill. There's some questions that came up in the chat. One is, if you're using a remote server, would that be Ubuntu?
A lot of times that is Ubuntu. It could be other operating systems too, like Red Hat or CentOS. So if you're not sure what it is, we recommend contacting your IT desk and seeing what they tell you. Another trick that we learned is just if you can go ahead and just try running the Ubuntu version of the data transfer tool, it works. It does work in a lot of Linux-based systems. It's just not guaranteed to work in all of them. So if it doesn't work, you reach out to the help desk, and if you have the operating system information, we can definitely help you.
Okay, there's another question in the chat. Is there a way to specify only BAI index files download in the related files argument?
Yes. So this actually wouldn't be the related files, but you could do that. If you only wanted to download BAI related files, um, first, if the use case is that you're downloading BAMs and you want to make sure nothing else is coming, don't be concerned because if you're only downloading BAMs and you run related files equals true, only BAI files will come through. Nothing else will come and use up a lot of your space. So don't worry about that. But if you are looking to only download BAI files, as in maybe you have the BAMs already, but you don't have the BAI files, you can do that by querying the API for the related files. I don't know what the field is offhand, so feel free to contact the help desk or look through our documentation if you want that. But there's a certain field that says for this BAM file, this UUID is the BAI file. And then you would just use that UUID to download the data using the transfer tool or the API.
Okay, and there's a question on, can you please elaborate on the strengths or limitations of the API versus the GDC Data Transfer Tool?
Sure. So the main difference between the two is the data transfer tool is automated. It has some flags you can use to customize it a little bit, but mostly it downloads the data, it downloads it to some place you tell it, or directly in the same um, location, and it downloads in a directory that is the UUID with the file inside. If and it automatically verifies the MD5 sum. So the data transfer tool we do recommend using if that's available because you want to make sure your files are intact and the MD5 sum is good. The API you could integrate into say a Python script and use it for a more customized download um, like download pipeline. So you can name files however you'd want. And the one downfall I would say is or the one potential source of error is that if a download is interrupted, the MD5 sum might be incorrect, as in the file will be not usable. So if you are using the API, we recommend verifying the MD5 sum um, if you can. And just to kind of talk a little bit about something I said before, the GDC Data Transfer Tool is another piece of software between you and the download. So if there's problems with your institution using third-party softwares, or it wouldn't be third-party to us, but it might be third-party to you, um, downloading through the API might be a more direct way to get the files you want.
Okay, and there's a question, are the images and their format similar to the to those under the image DICOM? They're SVS files. But go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so I know SVS files are different from DICOM files. I don't know exactly how because I'm not familiar with what DICOM files are, but I've heard of them and I know they are different. So I would recommend doing a little research on those two formats, but yeah, right as of now, most slide images of the GDC are SVS or JPEG 2000 files. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, yeah, thank you all so much for your time and for your attention. And yeah, thank you so much. Hope you all have a good day.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Bill.